My name is Valerie. It was a Thursday, with a gray sky and a light drizzle. The cold seeped into my sleeves no matter how tightly I wrapped my coat. I had just returned from the grocery store, carrying a bag of lemons, coffee filters, and a loaf of sourdough I didn't really need but craved. As I was halfway up the stairs to my friend Lisa's apartment, I saw her, my mother, standing at the top landing, holding a pie in a plastic bakery box with crimped edges and a barcode still stuck to the bottom. "Apple, of course," she said, smiling as if we were bumping into each other at the post office. "Hi, Valerie," she greeted me as if it had only been days, not weeks since we last saw each other. I stood still, the rain in my hair, a grocery bag in one hand and the key in the other. She looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe I was seeing her clearly for the first time. "I brought pie," she said, lifting it slightly, as if that explained everything. I walked the last few steps, unlocked the door but didn't open it fully. I stepped outside and stood in the hallway. She didn't ask to come in. Instead, she started talking. "I miss you," she said. "Things haven't been the same without you. Maybe we could have dinner sometime, talk things through." I looked at her, really looked. There were no tears, no apology. Just a mother trying to reset the situation without acknowledging what she had done. "So," I asked, as simply as I could, "are you here to apologize?" She blinked, then said, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world, "I don't think I need to. I think we both made mistakes." That was her answer, her version of peace, her need to keep the story mutual, equal, and safe. I nodded once, not in agreement, but in understanding. "I wish you well," I said. Then I stepped back inside and closed the door. I didn't slam it, didn't raise my voice. I just closed it because there was nothing else left to say. And more than that, I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Let me rewind a bit. I'm a 29-year-old graphic designer working at a studio called Moonlight Design in Seattle. 3 years ago, I moved back to Tacoma when my mother, Carol, was on the verge of losing our family home. She had always been a bit of a free spirit, spending money without much thought. After her small art gallery closed down due to financial difficulties, she struggled to keep up with the bills. The house was in disarray, with unpaid bills piling up on the kitchen table, the water heater leaking, and the power being shut off twice. I thought it would be a temporary arrangement. I came home with the hope of helping her get back on her feet. I took over the mortgage payments, paid all the utility bills, and did all the grocery shopping. I even fixed the broken garbage disposal and changed the air filters. I never asked her to split the costs, never expected a thank you. In fact, when she told the neighbors that she was helping me get back on my feet, I didn't correct her. It was Christmas Day. The house smelled of cinnamon and cloves, a scent that carried memories of happier times. I had been in the kitchen since dawn, chopping vegetables and preparing the turkey. By noon, the stuffing was cooling on the counter, and the apple pie was resting on the windowsill, just like my grandma used to do. I decorated the table with the old red napkins and the chipped porcelain Santa Claus we always put out, even though one of his legs was broken. I wanted to recreate that warm, family feeling, not because I believed in miracles, but because I believed in trying. My younger sister, Lily, who is 25, arrived an hour late with wet hair and no apology. She still kind of lived at home, coming and going as she pleased. Mom showed up around 4 p.m. Dressed in her purple silk blouse with the gold buttons, phone in hand, scrolling through social media. During dinner, there was hardly any conversation. The only sounds were the forks scraping the plates and the occasional clink of ice against the glass. I poured the wine, offered seconds, and lit the candles. I kept waiting for that moment of warmth, that feeling of family. Then, just as she was slicing into the turkey, her hand still on the knife, Mom looked up and said, "Valerie, you need to move out." She said it as casually as if she were commenting on the weather, as if it weren't Christmas, as if I hadn't just spent all day cooking and cleaning and paying her bills. I didn't answer right away. I think I blinked a few times. Lily glanced at me, her fork pausing in mid-air. For a second, I thought I had misheard. But no, Mom didn't repeat herself. She just looked down, took another bite, and kept chewing. I set my fork down slowly. All the decorations on the table, the turkey I had roasted, the pie cooling behind us, the quilted placemats my grandmother made suddenly felt out of place, like decorations for a party I was no longer invited to. Mom didn't look up again. She reached for her wine, tapped her phone to check a message that couldn't have been more important than what she had just done. Lily cleared her throat. She always hated being in the middle. She started, then gave up and went back to cutting her food. I finally spoke, my voice low but steady. Really? You need me to move out? She nodded, as if she hadn't heard the edge in my voice. Then she shrugged and said, "It's time I had my space back." I looked at her. Her hair was shorter than usual, and her makeup was too heavy. Her eyes never met mine. I didn't feel anger yet, it was something colder, a recognition that she had been thinking about this for a while. The fact that she chose Christmas dinner, after all I had done to make the house feel warm, said more than she probably intended. I nodded. I didn't protest, didn't cry, didn't ask when or why. I just folded my napkin, placed it on the plate, and stood up. Behind me, the candles flickered. No one reached out, no one followed. I walked to my room and shut the door, but I couldn't stop hearing her words, "You need to move out." And the echo, "You do not belong here." That night, I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. I didn't pack, didn't cry. I just sat there, hands folded in my lap, waiting for a knock on the door, a voice asking if I was okay, or just footsteps in the hallway. The only sounds were the distant hum of the dishwasher and the faint clink of glass from the kitchen, like someone was pouring another drink. I stared at the bookshelf across from me. 3 years of my efforts were stacked there: utility bills, cookbooks, a scented candle I bought for the guest bathroom and never lit. On the dresser, folded neatly, was the quilt my grandmother made when I was 16. It was a patchwork of old family fabrics, my dad's old denim jacket, scraps from Mom's painting apron, and a piece of Lily's baby blanket. She said it was a keeper of warmth. I hadn't slept under it in months, afraid it would start to smell like a house that no longer felt like home. I stood up and started gathering what I needed. A small duffel bag, my laptop, chargers, the quilt, and a framed photo of my dad taken on our last Christmas together. I left everything else, clothes in the drawers, shoes by the door, the mug I always used in the morning with a small crack on the rim. I didn't know where I would go, but I knew I couldn't stay. It was strange how easy it felt to leave, not because it didn't hurt, but because the weight of staying had become heavier than the weight of the unknown. I slept in my jeans that night on top of the covers, with my coat nearby and my bag zipped, just in case I changed my mind by morning. But I didn't. The next day, while the house was still quiet, Mom asleep, blinds drawn, I walked out the front door and down the icy steps. I didn't leave a note, didn't give an explanation. It was the quietest goodbye I could give. I caught a bus across town to Lisa's place. She was my friend from work, and her apartment was filled with too many cushions and a cat named Simba who disliked everyone. She let me in without asking why. I sank into her couch, the quilt in my lap, my coat still on, and stared at the ceiling, wondering how I had gotten here, not physically, but emotionally. How could I go from being the savior of the family to a stranger without anyone noticing? 3 days passed. There were no calls, no texts, no knocks on the door. I kept my phone face down most of the time, not because I didn't want to hear from Mom, but because I knew she wouldn't reach out. That silence was heavier than I expected. Lisa made space for me in her guest room, but I insisted the couch was fine. I wasn't planning to stay long, just long enough to breathe without having to apologize. Then, one morning, while I was pouring coffee into a chipped mug that said "Best day ever," my phone buzzed. It was a message from Lily. "You won't believe what Mom has been telling people." I called her immediately. She picked up on the first ring, whispering as if she didn't want Mom to hear. "She's telling everyone you had a huge argument with her, that you had a breakdown at dinner and stormed out, slamming doors. She says you abandoned her on Christmas." I didn't speak. I just listened. "She's already talked to Aunt Martha, Uncle David, and a few cousins. They think she's heartbroken, like you left her without warning after everything she's done for you." Lily sighed. "Valerie, I know what happened. I was there. I just thought you should know what's going around." "Thanks," I said softly. "Really?" We hung up. I stood in Lisa's kitchen for a long time, the coffee in the mug going cold. It wasn't the lie that hurt the most, it was how easily people believed it. By that evening, I had been removed from the family group chat. A cousin unfriended me on Instagram. One of Mom's art club friends posted something vague about kids these days having no respect. I considered staying silent, rising above it all. But I knew that's what she was counting on. So, I sat down, opened my laptop, and wrote. I didn't write a rant or a revenge piece, I just wrote the truth. I explained how I had moved back 3 years ago to help Mom keep the house. I detailed how I had paid the bills, the mortgage, and done everything I could to make things stable. I described how on Christmas, I had made dinner, set the table, and lit the candles, and then she had told me to move out. I emphasized that I hadn't yelled or slammed anything, I had just left because it was clear I was no longer welcome. I hit publish. Then I closed the laptop and walked away. I didn't check the comments, didn't refresh the screen. I just sat by the window, the quilt in my lap, watching the clouds roll in over the city. The truth was out there, and whether anyone believed it, that was out of my control. I didn't check my phone that night. I made a cup of tea, sat on the floor with Simba curled against my leg, and let the quiet settle like dust in the corners of the room. The next morning, I woke up to more notifications than I had seen in months. Texts, missed calls, emails, and messages from people I hadn't spoken to since high school. I almost didn't open any of them, but curiosity got the better of me. The first message I read was from Aunt Martha. She had always been the most level-headed in the family. She sent cards on random occasions and once gave me a bracelet with a tiny star charm on it, saying it would bring me luck. Her message said, "I had no idea. I'm so sorry for believing otherwise. Your post changed how I see everything." I sat with that sentence for a long time. Then came a direct message from my cousin Jake. We hadn't talked in years, but he wrote, "Honestly, we always wondered why your mom treated you the way she did. It never made sense." It was validating, but it also hurt. If they saw it, if even part of them knew something was wrong, why hadn't anyone asked sooner? Why hadn't anyone reached out when I was still in that house, paying those bills, setting that table alone? Not everyone responded. Some people stayed quiet. Others, I think, unfollowed me out of guilt or discomfort. A few left neutral emojis under my post, as if they weren't sure how to feel. And then there were those who sided with Mom. A message from Mom came in around noon. It was a long text. "I can't believe you would humiliate me like this. You've twisted everything. You're always the victim, Valerie. You always have been." There was no apology, no acknowledgement, just an attempt to regain control. I didn't reply. I didn't even screenshot it for proof. I just stared at her words until the screen dimmed, then flipped the phone face down again. After that, life started to change little by little. A few weeks later, I found a small studio apartment just outside the city, above a bookstore that always smelled like old books and vanilla. The place was old but clean, with wooden floors, a crooked window that caught the afternoon sun, and walls that didn't echo with disappointment. I bought a second-hand couch from a woman named Grace, who insisted on giving me a knitted throw blanket. I set up a small table by the window, planted a fern in an old clay pot, and let it grow at its own pace. I drank my coffee slowly, without headphones, without hearing whispers through the wall. For the first time in years, I didn't have to explain why I was tired or quiet or not in the mood to talk. Silence no longer felt like a punishment, it felt like peace. Lisa helped me move in. Simba came by once, hissed at the baseboard, and left. It felt right somehow. One afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was Lily. She asked if I had time for coffee. We met at a small coffee shop downtown, with chalkboard menus and mismatched chairs. She looked tired, older in a way that wasn't about age but about the weight she was carrying. After some small talk, she finally said, "Things got worse after you left." I didn't ask for details, but she gave them anyway. The mortgage payments were behind, the power had been shut off again, and Mom was blaming everyone, the power company, the economy, and me. "She's spiraling," Lily said. "But I guess you knew that." I nodded. Then she looked straight at me. "You did the right thing by leaving. You should have done it sooner." I didn't know how much I needed to hear that until I did. We sat in silence for a while, shared a slice of carrot cake, and talked about random things. Before we left, she added, "I'm thinking of leaving, too. I just need to figure out how." I reached for her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "I can't pay your way, but I won't let you drown." And for the first time in a long time, we walked out of a place side by side. It's been a few months now. The fern is still growing. The quilt stays folded at the foot of the bed. Its corners are soft from years of use. I haven't washed it since I left, and I don't think I will. It still smells like something I can't quite name, but I want to keep that smell. I see Lily sometimes. We don't talk much about home, but we talk. She sends me photos of apartments she's looking at, with small kitchens and brick walls. One had blue curtains and a view of an old park. She smiled when she showed it to me. That was enough. I've started baking again, not often, just when the mood strikes. I made an apple pie once, not for anyone in particular, just to see if I remembered how. It burned a little around the edges, but it still tasted like something worth holding on to. I haven't taken down the post. People stopped talking about it weeks ago, but I leave it up. Not for them, but for me. Because there's a difference between moving on and pretending it never happened. Mom hasn't reached out again. I don't expect her to. Sometimes I think about that pie she brought to my door. It's still in the box, still cold. I never opened it. Some things don't need to be tasted to be understood. And some goodbyes don't need to be loud to last. She didn't teach me how to stay, she taught me how to leave with grace. I learned that love doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes it's about walking away, not out of anger, but to protect the parts of myself that no one else sees. I spent years trying to fix a home that wasn't really mine, pouring my energy into walls that didn't hold me. Mom's words at Christmas taught me that gratitude isn't guaranteed, even when you give everything. But the real lesson was in the leaving. It wasn't about running, it was about choosing myself when no one else did. The quilt, the silence, the small apartment, they became my anchors, not her approval. I learned that the truth doesn't need everyone's belief to stand. It just needs to be said. And family isn't always the people you save. It's the ones who see you when you're drowning and reach out, like Lily did. Most of all, I learned that grace isn't about loud apologies or grand gestures. It's about closing a door softly, carrying your own weight, and letting go of what doesn't hold you. Life doesn't owe you closure, but it gives you the space to build something new, one small, steady step at a time.